What's up developers, and welcome back to a new video where we will be setting up Visual Studio Code for the best Laravel experience. If you want to help this channel out with the content I create, now head down to Patreon where you get benefits as a private Discord group where you can share your coding issues and other developers will help you out. If you are interested to join, the link will be in the description down below. Now that we have set up our first Laravel project, we got to make sure that we use an editor that we like to write code in. Personally, I like to use either PHP Storm or Visual Studio Code when it comes to PHP code. And since PHP Storm is quite expensive and you don't have that many add-ons, I decided to make a video on adding the right extensions in Visual Studio Code. Now whenever you want to install Visual Studio Code, you have to obviously open a new tab and go to code.visualstudio.com. We're located on the official website of Visual Studio Code. And based on the operating system that you're using, you'll see a download button with different text on it. I'm currently on a Mac and Visual Studio Code recognizes that. That's why it's saying download for Mac. If you're on a Windows, it will probably say something along the lines of download for Windows. What I'd like you to do is download Visual Studio Code and open the Laravel app that we created in the previous video. Pause the video and I'll see you back once you're done. For most of the extensions that we will be adding in this video, I'll demonstrate some of the features it provides to actually show you what it does. I have deleted all my PHP or Laravel related extensions and I want to download it all together. So let's do that right now. The first extension that I want to install is actually not related to PHP, since I want to update my theme. Currently, we're working with Visual Studio Code, its default theme. When you want to add a new extension, you have to click on the 4 squares in the left panel right here. This will open a new sidebar next to it, which will be the extensions marketplace. So whenever you want to install an extension, you just have to search for it. Now the first extension that I want to add is called Community Material Theme. It's the first one. It has close to 1 million downloads, so let's install it. Now once that's done, you'll see a drop-down popping up with all the different themes. Pause the video, go over the themes and choose the one you like. I try to change it up every single time I create a new course, so for this course I want to use Community Material Theme, Pale Night High Contrast. So let's hit enter, and as you can see, we have updated our theme. The second extension that I want to add right now is called Laravel Artisan. It's an extension that has been created by Ryan Naddy, and it allows us to perform some artisan commands within Visual Studio Code inside the CLI. So let's hit install. There's no need to follow along, just watch and see what it does. Now let me actually open the command line interface by going to terminal and clicking on new terminal. And what we can do right here is basically say PHP artisan route list, which will show all available routes inside our project. And what the extension that we added allows us to do is first pressing Command Shift P, search for route, and you'll see an option right here called route list. Let's click on it, and right here it has opened a new tab with all available routes inside our application. Next to that, let's perform it one more time, say artisan. You'll see all the other commands that it allows us to do through the Laravel Artisan extension that we just added. The third extension that we're going to add starts with Laravel, but it's the third one in the list called Laravel Blade Snippets, which has been created by Winnie. Now let's click on install. Alright. Laravel uses Blade for their front-end part, and this extension allows you to create snippets the same way as HTML snippets. If we navigate back to the project directory, open the resources folder, views folder, you'll find a welcome.blade.php file. Let's open it for a second and scroll to the bottom. Alright, somewhere inside our body, let's say right here. Within Blade, which is the file extension for views, you got some methods that you could perform, and one of them is yielding content. Instead of saying, well, add yield, parentheses, you could simply say, well, I have a yield, hit enter, and our yield has been created with a parameter inside the yield method. Whenever you want to print out variables from the controller inside your view, you have to wrap it inside a double set of curly braces, just like this. As you can see, it's not adding extra spaces inside the curly braces. If we write down variable name right now, you'll see that it can kind of be clustered. And this is actually something that's bothering me. Now there's an extension in Visual Studio Code. Let's go to the extensions market called Laravel Blade spacer. What this will do is simply adding spaces around your blade snippets. So it's the first one created by Austin Cameron. Let's install it. Let's navigate back to our welcome.blade.php file. Let's remove our variable. If we add a double set of curly braces, it has added spaces to the left and to the right where we can add a variable called name in the middle, which looks a lot better than this. Right. Now let's remove our variable and let's add the next two extensions. The first one is called Laravel Extra Intellisense. It's the first one created by Amir. Let's click on install. And let's also install Intellisense for PHP. So let's search for PHP Intellisense, and you write it in a different way. So let's click on the first one created by Ben Milburn. Click on install. These extensions add auto-completion for things like routes, views, configuration files, Laravel mix, validation, the .env file, route middlewares, and a lot more. If we navigate back to our project directory and open the app folder at the top, HTTP folder, and the controllers folder, we've got a default controller.php file. Let's go right below our use statements, and let's define a new method right here. So let's say public function test. Let's return a view method. Now what Laravel Intellisense recognizes is that whenever we try to pass in a parameter, so let's say single quotes, it recognizes all the views available inside our app. So if we click on welcome, it will refer to the welcome.blade.php file that we have inside the views folder. Alright, let's remove our test method. Let's go back to the extensions market and let's install Laravel goto view. It's the first one created by Coding U. Install it. Now let's navigate back to our controller one more time. Let's actually undo what we just deleted, excuse me. Hover over the welcome parameter. On a Mac, press down the options button. And on Windows, it will probably be Control-click. So let's click on it. And as you can see, we have just been redirected to the welcome.blade.php file. The same thing can be done for our controllers. So inside the extensions market, let's say Laravel. The name is a little bit different because we need to add a dash, goto-controller. It's the first one, created by Steph. Click on install. And the most common place where you call controllers inside your application is inside the routes folder, web.php file. Now let's quickly define a route. So let's say a route : get. The endpoint is /, comma, brackets, controller, : class. And the method is index. Alright, what it allows us to do is pretty much the same. Press the options button, click on controller. We have been redirected to the controller class. Now what we can do right now is delete our route because we won't be using it anymore. And let's also delete the test method. The next extension is one that I haven't really used a lot, but I'm hearing a lot of positive things about it. Let's open the extensions market and let's search for Laravel Snippets. It's the first one created by Winnie again. Click on install. What it allows you to do is use shortcuts to define broadcast, cache, routes, cookies, eloquent, and way more. Let's open the web.php file. Write down RO, which stands for route, and another R, which will find the method redirect and resource. If we click on resource, you'll see that it auto-completed the entire route for us. Once again, let's delete the route, and let's move on to the next extension, which is called Laravel-goto-components. It's the first one, well, the only option. Click on install. And this extension isn't actually an easy one to show you right now because we're not working with components. And it pretty much does the same thing as the previous goto extensions. But this will go to the components rather than the view. There are also some PHP extensions that we can add. So right inside of the search bar, let's search for PHP. Most of you will have these PHP extensions installed, so I want to quickly go over them. The first one is the PHP doc block created by Neil Brayfield. Click on install. As the name implies, it creates doc blocks for your parameters. Let's also search for PHP doc comment created by Rex and install it, which will do basically the same thing for functions, variables, and classes. We have PHP namespace resolver, which is a key extension that you need to have, created by Mahedi Hassan. And what this allows you to do is to import missing namespaces. Now these were the PHP extensions that we needed for Laravel. let's focus on some additional extensions that are not necessarily needed, but definitely good to have. The first one is called Beautify, created by HookieQR. Let's install it. And this is probably a package with the most amount of downloads I've ever seen in Visual Studio Code, since it has over 8 million downloads. Visual Studio Code has JavaScript Beautify installed by default, but there are some features missing here and there. This extension is pretty much the same extension, but on steroids. With Laravel, you'll be using the .env file quite a lot, so let's add an extension that will add colors, auto-completions, and so on to your .env file. The name of it is .env. It's the first one, created by Mike Stead. Install it. Now, once you start working with APIs, you'll be using JSON quite a lot. So let's search for paste JSON as code, created by QuickType. Let's install it. Now, this extension is pretty key since JSON code can be messy at times, especially when working with quite a lot of data. I will also be using Tailwind for this course because it's incredible and easy to integrate with Laravel. The downside of Tailwind is the fact that it has thousands of classes that you need to use. There is an extension that will fix that for you called Tailwind CSS Intellisense. It's the first one created by Tailwind itself. Let's click on install. What this extension will do is showing you auto-completion, syntax highlighting, and linting when it comes to Tailwind. At the moment, our folder structure has no icons, which is kind of bothering me. If we search for great icons, you will find a complete list of new icon themes that you could use. This does not affect your code, just choose something you're comfortable with. Personally, I really like using VS Code Create Icons, which is the first one that has been created by Emmanuel Biziat. Let's click on install. Let's enable it by clicking on VS Code Create Icons. Let's navigate back to our project directory. And as you can see, folders have their own little icon, and even the files. Blade has an icon, the routes have an icon, the .env has an icon, GitHub, and way more. The last extension that we can use has nothing to do with PHP, but it's called Database Client. It's the first one created by Siwayan. Click on install. This extension basically adds an interface where you can get access to your database. You can perform queries, delete rows, and a lot of more stuff related to database management. It also supports a lot of different types of databases, such as MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, Redis, and Elasticsearch. Before we continue on, let's actually quickly set it up. Once you have installed the extension, you will see a new icon added to your left panel, right below your extensions market, called Database. And the icon looks like a database as well. Let's click on it. As you could see, we don't have a connection defined. So let's do that quickly. In the top right corner of your database client, you'll see some icons right here. Let's click on the plus sign to create a new connection. And let me actually close off the terminal. All right. Right here, you will see an interface that is pretty new, but the labels and input fields might not. These are pretty standard when you want to connect to your database. The host, username, and port have been defined. I don't have a password defined for MySQL. If you do, just add it right here. What we can do right now is click on connect. A message popped up saying connection success. And if we take a look at the left panel, you'll see all my databases that I have defined on my local host. This was it for this video where we installed Visual Studio Code, added some pretty important extensions from the marketplace, and we also tested out some of them. In the next video, we will be installing a pretty cool tool in Laravel, which is the debug bar. If you do like my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.